And hello, everybody, live here from Central Victoria, Bendigo, Victoria, Australia, the land of the Jar Jar Wrong. I would like to pay my respects and acknowledge the elders of the past, present, and the future, and also acknowledge that the struggle of the first people here is part of the overwhelming class struggle. It is part of our struggle as well. So welcome. Welcome. What a week. What a week it's been. I've been actually flat out all week. As you're obviously aware, we had a good week with Lactalis over last weekend. It was the agreement was agreed in principle. We're just sorting out the wording now, but that was a 10-day dispute, and obviously I was catching up with stuff during the week. I've still actually got another 2 negotiations with a couple other companies at the moment happening, and hopefully we can have something finalised by Christmas, or at least something agreed in principle by Christmas, because I'm going to have the month of January off. I'm going to have that off. It's a quieter time for us all, and I just really need a break. I haven't had a break at all this year, interesting enough. I've been flat out. I've been busy. Regional Victoria, where we've had lockdowns, but it didn't stop me from working. I haven't been working from home. I haven't been I've been out on the road. I was working in my office and still flying the flag as such. So that's where I'm at the moment. We've just, it's obviously been a lot happening here in Australia during the week. I can't cover every single complete issue as there, but I'm just going to generalise the major ones. An update with COVID-19. Obviously now we've had over 2 weeks straight with 0 cases here in Victoria. New South Wales looking to, I think, next weekend lift its borders, lift the border restrictions. So we will be able to travel into New South Wales again and vice versa. And I'm actually looking forward to it in a lot of ways as well, because I want to catch up with some people. And hopefully, actually, it'll be like this right through Christmas, well into New Year, and forever. To be honest with you, I don't want any more cases of COVID-19 at all. Neither does anyone else, to be on that matter. Yes, it'd be nice to actually go and see my parents around Christmas time and catch up with some old friends I haven't seen for well over a year, or getting close to a year. Now, anyway, regarding the COVID-19, obviously, for those of you overseas, but no doubt I'll see you in Australia, South Australia. During the week, had a cluster that broke out, and obviously straight away they went into complete lockdown altogether. That response time was really good. I'm glad that happened, because you only need 1 or 2 cases, and this whole thing just then spreads out in no time. So there's been a lot of testing. Hopefully, South Australia can get itself back in order. And the health director there was quite correct about many things. It was quite interesting and pointed out too. I won't go on to this issue, another issue at the moment, but the reason why they didn't close down liquor shops. And that because it actually recognised that alcohol is a big problem here in Australia, and if you just automatically switch off the tap, it will actually make matters worse. That's interesting point she raised there. But I won't talk about that. Go back to COVID-19. But the one thing that did come out of this was the demonisation of someone or worker who apparently lied, or might have actually given the incorrect information. I don't think they actually deliberately lied. But the way the Premier, Stephen Marshall of South Australia, has been carrying on, along with other people in authority, and trying to demonise someone in such a way. Well, that's just typical. Someone in power trying to demonise someone who hasn't got any power whatsoever, and realise actually the Premier's got a lot to answer for anyway at that moment, for starters. I mean, they could have actually pressed for more correct information before they went to a lockdown. So whose fault is it? I believe it's the Premier. It all goes down to the Premier of South Australia. But obviously, too, it actually comes to show there's people out there that got more than one job to just try and make ends meet. So to turn around and say this worker lied, I think was an incorrect thing. Maybe misunderstood or some misinformation, but completely lied. No, I don't think so. In fact, the Premier knows full well that there's people out there that've got 2 jobs to make ends meet, not, or even possibly 3. And it's not a matter of question they lied or not. And just realised the problem he's got there in South Australia was, well, if you're going to employ security as such, well, they need to be employed either direct with the government or direct to that hotel as such, and they have no other employment, and they must have a good wage as well while they're at it, so they can sustain themselves in life, not having to try and scramble around and make ends meet. Maybe it's something Premier Steve Marshall, we might just want to take that into account instead of just mouthing off like you did and start attacking working class people like a particular person. Did someone did that to deliberately disrupt the economy over there? No, they did not at all. And far as I care, the federal government is also just as equally to blame in all this. In fact, they're more to blame in all this. It was quite interesting how they've been attacking Labor governments around Australia, being Queensland, Victoria here especially, but also Western Australia. It was quite pointed out that nothing at all to attack the Liberal government of New South Wales, who, in fact, let's face it, in fact, allowed a ship full of COVID-19 cases into Sydney Harbour. They got a lot to say for that. They're corrupt as anything. Didn't go through proper lockdown measures, and it could have avoided a lot of cases up there in New South Wales. And they're still having little clusters around the place as well. They're just being very lucky at the moment. I don't like using that word lucky so much, but they've been actually very lucky at the moment. But who's to say as well, also Sydney is a very one of the most populated cities in Australia, along with Melbourne. So they've got a bit to answer for as well. Mind you, the corruption that's rife in New South Wales, well, I won't go into that now, can be a lot to be said for. What's the word for the federal government? Nothing. And what have they done for this whole COVID-19? Nothing. It's been left to the state governments to deal with this. And there's been no federal plan or coordination. And also to respect that, sometimes, yes, state borders have to be shut in order to contain the virus, but also at the same time, so we can actually eliminate its spread altogether and eliminate it completely. That was all part of it, and they know that for a fact. Greg Hunt, the federal health minister, standing up there parading like he was all the good guy, and also the federal treasurer Josh Frydenberg is trying to blame the economy on the state governments, and the respective state governments have got a lot. He's got a lot to answer for himself, and the fact is they all do. So, far as I care, to the federal government, pull your heads in pretty quickly. You've done nothing for us at all. You generally do nothing besides attack working class people and anything progressive at all in Australia. So I just wanted to highlight that point this week. So there are cases still out there, COVID-19, and like I've just said before, Victoria here, we've been very fortunate now for over 2 weeks, and we want to keep it that way as well. A lot of people are out and about. Obviously, the Iron Curtain's been lifted on Melbourne, and last weekend and this weekend, a lot of people leaving Melbourne, visiting regional Victoria. And I can't blame them for doing so. I think being in a tight lockdown like that would drive you mad and to the point of insanity. And I think at the same time, it's good for them to get out and about. Although, mind you, I've never seen Bendigo packed out in my life. I mean, we've had busy weekends, and a lot of people did it last weekend, and even this morning. It's phenomenal at the moment. So I'm fortunate I can get a car park at my place of work. I'm just actually live from here in the Bendigo Trades Hall Council room. You can see some of the old honours boards behind me, and that. But unfortunately, I've got a car park space out the back there. So that's what I want to talk about lightly on that. And just actually, good morning to as a etatist. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. And I like your comment, federalism at its worst also here in Germany in relations to COVID management. Yeah, look, I tend to agree. Actually, my heart goes out to everyone in Europe and in Britain and also in America as well. The amount of cases, that's just phenomenal. I think it's just like, it could have been easily done. I know it's painful for a lot of people, but hey, lockdown, get this under control very quickly, and because people's lives matter more than capitalist interests are, as I care. But what we're seeing is capitalist interests reign supreme. Keep everything open, keep everyone out and about. Oh, you don't have to wear a mask if you don't want to. That's voluntary. What a stupid thing to do. And I mean, they really need to get that under control. In Germany, because you actually have a much bigger population than what we do here in Australia, and also condense in a further smaller landmass than what we are. We're quite spread out, although here in Victoria we're more concentrated, and New South Wales to a certain degree, but no, majority of Australia we're quite spread out. We're probably easier. It's a lot easier, and because we're an island nation as well, and there's no other country bordering us, so we're actually quite fortunate that we're able to get that under control, and that goes along with New Zealand as well. We're fortunate to have that. But in Germany, you've obviously got other countries, massively densely populated countries bordering you as well, and it's going right from all over Europe. I understand the vaccine's out. Hungary, actually interesting. Russia's been supplying Hungary with the new Sputnik vaccine. Very good. If I could, I'd actually grab that vaccine as well. I think I'm led to believe we've developed a vaccine here in Australia through the Commonwealth Serum Laboratory. It might be out by early next month, definitely by Christmas. But look, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm going to, regardless of who made it. I know there's a bit of a discussion on Facebook among some circles about Pfizer and all these. Would you trust a chemical or a pharmaceutical company that's done all these things or X, Y, Z? Look, I mean, if a vaccine's there, I'm going to take it. Regardless, I'd rather have some form of immunity to it, because one thing, I don't want to have COVID-19. I am a little bit wary about people going out taking vaccines. As I said, I'm not anti-vax. I'm fully for vaccinations for obvious reasons. Australia, actually interesting, here's something. Australia actually used to be a leading role. It used to be the leading country in vaccinations. We used to play a leading role. Remember polio, measles, smallpox, all the various things over the year. For many, many years, they actually used to kill a lot of people, and we got on top of it. We're actually also a leading country in anti-venom as well. So if anyone is bitten by a deadly snake or a deadly spider, such as the Sydney funnel web, or the various strains of funnel web spiders here in Australia, we've got an anti-venom for it now. So we actually did play a leading role in all that over years of 40 years of Chicago 5 style neoliberal economics. Obviously, has put Australia back right down the list again. We certainly need to be back up there again. Obviously, we've seen the vaccinations and that are starting to come fruition. So it's a good sign as well. At least I always believe we should also hold on to hope as well. Hope always kept me going. Look, now just say yes, NATO members are even making the issue of vaccination a geopolitical issue, and no, it's unfortunate. It's just typical capitalism. We've got to make it a geopolitical issue instead of like a human life issue instead. And the pharmaceutical companies are looking to make profit here. That's what capitalists do, right? They seek to make further profit. The other one as well gets to making it a geopolitical idea instead of like worldwide cooperation. That's why under socialism, it would have been worldwide cooperation, win-win for everybody, instead of like every man for himself. And now we're using this as a political tool against other countries as well. But I will talk a little bit more about that later on. But I want to actually go back to the home front here as well. Actually, this also links the relations with China as well. It's not getting any better. Our federal government's just carrying on like pork chops at the moment. This, and quite right, they do not have to follow any other country. Now, why does Australia have to be involved in any conflict or any antagonisms towards China? They're still our largest trading partner. And okay, I can understand some people in this country because their manufacturing went offshore and a lot of it went to China. Also, a lot of it went to India, a lot of it went to Bhutan, Singapore, Thailand, or various other countries around where their labour can be exploited further. But we do not need to have hostile relations between the two countries at all. One thing I will say this, and I'll probably have the Australian Federal Police crashing down my door, but China is actually not a threat to us. They are not going to invade us. I don't believe. I'm happy to prove it wrong, but however, they're not interested. They're interested in win-win cooperation and building up economies around the world along with theirs as well. And I think for us to actually be in any hostile antagonisms towards China is not in our class interests at all. We're best off having peaceful relations with them. Okay, fine. We should be actually developing our own manufacturing here, and that's actually high on the agenda, especially in the union I'm with, the AFWU. Manufacturing is dear to our heart, and we definitely need to show that Australia needs to be a lot more self-reliant again. We're an island nation, and we're talking about geopolitics. For example, we actually are very dependent on shipping. For both import export. The only thing we export is raw materials. That's the majority of our exports and agricultural commodities. But when we come to manufacturing goods and elsewhere, it's very, very minimal. But it has exposed to Australia that we're highly dependent on imports from overseas, and also we're very highly dependent on our shipping. And yes, we should be having our own Australian national line again. We used to until it was privatised by a Labor government too, not by the federal Liberal, Labor government. That was sold off. It was ANL, it's called Australian National Line. And we're talking about actually, and it should be back under public ownership of shipping as well, especially a country that's dependent mostly on shipping for our export-import business. Oh, well, also too, I just want to, for all those of you around the world and here in Australia, obviously I only heard about this yesterday, or actually, sorry, late on Thursday. The Australian Federal Police raided the Construction, Forestry, Mining and Energy's New South Wales Union's office in New South Wales, the CFMEU, which predominantly the construction division was raided by the Federal Police. Now, why? I don't know completely. I don't know the whole history. The Australian Financial Review is just, and also it's typical of the bourgeois media, obviously geeing it on. Now, at the moment, the construction division out there is at the moment got a big campaign across the construction industry for a 5% per annum increase in their pay for the next 3 years, so 5, 5 and 5, which equals a 15% increase in 3 years. And I think basically, and there was also too to actually have set RDOs instead of, building up. I'll just put it, an RDO is a rostered day off. That's not just an entitlement. That was something hard fought for many years. And I'll go on to about some of our conditions we enjoy here in Australia in a minute. But anyway, there was much improvements for construction workers in that industry throughout New South Wales, predominantly in Sydney, but the rest of the state as well. It's quite interesting. They've also, too, the Australian Fin Review, I wish I had it with me at the time, the Australian Financial Review, our friends at the Fin, they indicated too that the CFMU was doing some collusion with a Chinese-owned construction company. And just going back with the anti-China rhetoric, regardless of what construction industry, what foreign multinational owns it, at the end of the day, a capitalist still owns it. And yes, they're a union. They need to deal with the capitalists in order to have negotiations and that. So regardless of the Chinese, American, British, European, Australian, wherever around the world, they need to deal with it. And I just thought that's just a typical cynical remark to say that as well. I don't know the full stories, but I find it's a disgrace. For that to be organised, I believe it's more political to raid a union's office again, and it's not the first time this has happened. It's happened countless of times, and it's kind of God knows, last 100 years, the amount of unions have been raided by police for whatever reason. It's usually for political gain, and I don't know if you actually noticed, but in yesterday's Age, and besides, and I'll talk about Afghanistan later on, that was on the front page. But look at this. Morrison sets end of year target for emissions and IR, industrial relations. And I was reading that article. No one knows exactly what the devil's in the detail, but I think it's the last fortnight of the sitting of Parliament. They're going to introduce an industrial relations bill. What's in it, I don't know, but I'm expecting the worst as well. It's just typical. So what a great excuse to use, go and raid a union's office and make it a political shoehole, and then claiming that these officials did some insidious stuff around Australia. And I'm over it. People say, oh, unions are not clean either. Well, listen, I'm just going to put it this way. Do you want an effectual union movement at all, or do you want to keep suffering? Unions got a part of the class struggle, and they need to be actually well organised and not having hindrances put onto them. And I'm over the attacks as well, and criticisms as such. Most actually criticisms of the union movement are people who are not even members. They're not even involved. So it's quite interesting that. So for those of you who are not involved in the unions or not even members, but just want to sit at the sides and throw mud, I've got an answer for you. Go and pull your heads in somewhere, please. I was actually going to say a lot worse, but I'll keep it refrain. Just pull your heads in. But anyway, it's something to be concerned about, this raid as such, because this could be a precedent for many other unions as well, not just the CFMEU. Pardon me. Which actually flows on too. There's also another thing that happened. Something else happened during this week. One of the major construction companies in Australia, Grocon, has collapsed. I'm not telling you the actual reasons what's happened around that, but they've actually gone into financial collapse. Now, in the construction industry, Let me just get some water here. Oh, something tickling back right there. While I was in the construction industry, a lot of the big projects we're seeing, not just from high rise, but also infrastructure, that it's just to keep the construction companies going, because if they don't have a contract within 2 years, they go belly up. And if they're not owed them money in particular time or whatever, because they borrow heavily, but if they're not actually owed money right in time for the client or from various subcontractors, etc., they can go belly up quite quickly. And that's just typical capitalist modes of production here. The construction industry is a very up and down industry, boom, bust. There's no steady construction scheme. It's either peak or bust, and that's how it's run. And I mean, unions like the CFMU have been trying to regulate it for many years, and it's a tough fight. But look, we all know under capitalism, it's just near to impossible at times. So, and this one with the Grocon collapse is concerning, because now there's going to be a lot of workers, their entitlements, they're going to be out of pocket with their entitlements, be it they're from their superannuation, long service leave, and other entitlements such as annual leave, etc. All that they're owed, and now because they'll be the last on the list when their creditors come in and start selling off assets and that, and owing the various shareholders, banks, etc. The workers themselves are at the very bottom end of the scale here. And typical capitalism, they're the last in line. And they won't be, and they'll be many, many years to try and achieve their full entitlement. Superannuation is especially critical, because that's our retirement savings here in Australia. And any loss in superannuation will vastly affect your retirement plans as well. And obviously leave you struggling at an age when you're quite elderly as well. So there is concerns there, and unions like the CFMU do play a big leading role there, and our union does too, when essentially, especially when businesses go belly up, and we're trying to chase up the workers' entitlements, what they're owed. It certainly is a bit of concern, and this is nothing new. It's not just like a one-off. It just happens every day, quite a lot, and that. But the thing is, what gets me and everyone else, the owners and shareholders and that, get away from it scot-free. They can go declare bankruptcy and the next day start a new company under a different name, etc., and under someone else's name, and keep continuing. They can even siphon off the money and use this and turn their company into a shelf company, and obviously that will go broke up, and they'll start up their own again and they'll run away. Basically, the old saying that they were last seen heading towards the airport with a large amount of cash and never to be seen again. And that's what they're like. They're thieves, and that's what capitalists are. That's how capitalism came into being. It's through thieving, but they didn't actually grab all this wealth honestly. Through a lot of seizing of land and estates and minerals, etc., and then they legislated it, and obviously under the system as well. So if you look at the history of capitalism, when it came into being, it wasn't because there was a bunch of honest individuals were quite wealthy. Honestly, that was through a lot of insidious stuff that happened many hundred years ago. So that's something worthwhile. Watch this space. I picked it up this morning. I was reading through an article actually on the CFMU's webpage, and obviously about that they've got a big task ahead of them. Look, my heart goes out for you as well. Solidarity with you as well with that. With Grocon, well, I don't hold them in high regards anyway. I've got no time for the Grollo family. I won't get into it, but I used to work for Grocon many years ago when I finished my apprenticeship as a boilermaker. I worked in construction there, and the first company was with Grocon for about 18 months. And I'll tell you what, when I saw the safety, it was shocking on their sites, and amongst other things as well, just how they treated a lot of people. It was pretty disgraceful. Also, to big ticket item this week in Australia is obviously about the war crimes in Afghanistan. So I'm going to have a unnamed iced coffee. This will forever stay unnamed, and that has no sugar either in it. Very tasty. Yes, there's one thing about these shows, and thank you, Caleb. I think all our beverages and etc. we drink during these sessions will forever and remain unnamed. We're not here to advertise and support them. But going back in, support brands, etc. I wanted to just say that this is on yesterday's Age, disgraceful betrayal, in the sense where what's happened with service people in Afghanistan, predominantly with the SAS and commando units. Last week, actually, I spoke about it on Working Class Revolt we did the interview with Caleb Maupin. Dust James and myself did an interview with Caleb Maupin last week on last Sunday, and it was quite well popular. Now, there's been about 39 war crimes has been committed, but there's possibly been more. Now, there's obviously a lot of talk about the culture in the SAS, this warrior culture, and just how the whole mythological about the myth of the Australian digger overseas, etc. And it is actually quite disgraceful. But what gets me about this, they're going after the actual soldiers that commit the crime. But what about the COs, the commanding officers as well? And what about the then federal governments as well? There's both Labor and Liberal, let's face it, yes, the John Howard government, the Conservative government of John Howard, committed our troops to go into Afghanistan along with US and many other nations, which actually Australia didn't need to. We really didn't need to. It was not in our interest to go there, but because we're part of that US allied, we're part of the US imperial bloc in the sense where, but in the Pacific, allies in the Pacific is the US is in command, but that was we grabbed our commands and committed some troops to Afghanistan. At the end of the day, there was no point of us being there. The only reason what we were there for, so we did our part to destabilise the region. It was there to curtail, to encircle. Well, you look on the borders there. You have China to the east, Iran to the west, and to the north, Russia. A perfect way to destabilise. And it wasn't just about minerals and oil and whatever else. Yes, there's a lot of that in there, but if that was just primarily what it's all about, then the drill rigs would have been in there a long time ago, and there would have been a massive mining construction boom happening in Afghanistan right now, even now as we're speaking. And obviously that wasn't the case at all. That was just there to destabilise the growth, the trade in opium, which is like the formation, which is the basis for heroin's increased now. It's rife around the world, and also human trafficking and arms as well. And terrorism hasn't gone away. It was the only thing to go in there, excuse to get to arrest Osama bin Laden and get rid of Al Qaeda. Well, yeah, that might have happened, but the fact is terrorism's increased around the world tenfold ever since, funded by, interesting enough, by the CIA. Anyway, going back to this issue about this, there's certainly a lot of people are supposedly in shock. All for the last 20 years or so, since we've been, I'll retract that, more than 20 years, but within the last 18, 17 years, since our troops have been committed to Afghanistan. The fact is, we've had Anzac Days, have been making memorial services and all this big hoo-ha about it, and everyone, oh yeah, well done. And then all of a sudden, now the chickens have come home to roost, and basically saying this is what happened. To a lot of us, it actually wasn't surprising either. Of course, this was going to happen, and we understand you're in a particular situation like this, and this whole what they call the warrior culture has increased, and I think it was a good thing. They're doing the right thing, and that, well, the fact is, the end of the day, look what's happened. And unfortunately, just apologising to all the victims or the victims' families is not going to help. I think we're going to have to come to realise how complicit our Australian governments have been involved in this. Now, many years ago, actually, I just after 9/11, for those of you to bring you all up to speed, after 9/11, it was also a political thing as well for the then federal government. John Howard was our Prime Minister. He was actually in the US when 9/11 happened, and obviously the media had a field day. Hillary was in the White House, or I think the Congress, that House of Representatives stood up, and there he was. Everyone's congratulating him and used it to his political advantage. And obviously, to grant our orders, we're going to war. Now, it was under the guise of just stopping terrorism, and no doubt sooner or later we're committing troops to Afghanistan. There were rallies actually all over Australia against that. As I said, there was actually quite opposition to it. But the big one was actually against Iraq as well, war against Iraq. And I was involved in a lot of those rallies. at that time. It was a shame that the rally sort of fell apart after that, after several, because we had the momentum to keep it going. I think it was just a lack of working class leadership in it overall. There were splits in the peace movement. That's because it wasn't working class led. It was middle class led, led by petty bourgeois elements. Bringing the troops home, bringing the boys home. Peace for peace sakes. War's horrible. Well, we all know that. Of course, war is horrible. I've never heard anyone say war is a lovely thing. But it was a lack of that as well. And it's not a matter of the working class has got to be the driving force. They have to be the leading class. And yes, there were splits, personality clashes, and obviously went nowhere. But those big marches did send a message. There was complete opposition to that war right through. Now, this has been one of the longest of Australia's conflicts we've been in. I think we pulled the last troops out there a couple of years ago. But look, the thing is on that, there's obviously the investigation is going to be continuing. There's going to be charges laid, but I think actually really by rights, the then former Prime Minister John Howard, the defence ministers, and actually respective other government ministers should be pulled into court as well. Into the International Court for War Crimes. There's not just the immediate troops that committed the war crimes, but what about their commanding officers and also them respective governments, and also to the Labor government. It had the opportunity where both under Rudd and Gillard, Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard, aka Julia Gohard, to pull our troops out. We didn't have to be committed there. So if to say to them, for any of them to turn around, even our current federal governments and previous prime ministers, be it even Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull, but even Scott Morrison turn around and say they didn't know about it, and they go around pontificating with self-righteousness how poor they are. Well, hang on. During that time, since the early 2000s, we've had changes of governments. We've had a federal Liberal National government right up to 2007, then a federal Labor government to about 2013, and then from then on, a federal Liberal government. So, I mean, who's to blame here? Instead of blame, they all need to take responsibility about this. So nothing's mentioned at all in the bourgeois press about that. And quite frankly, yes, John Howard should have been arrested too and sent to the International Court in The Hague there for committed on war crimes, along with Tony Blair and George W. Bush and many others that had committed their countries to war, both in Afghanistan and Iraq. Now it's all come around to bite us again. And Robin, all we got out of that, not only besides destabilising that region further, is further terrorism, further drug problems, issues with weapons, illegal arms, and also human trafficking as well, and also to the influx of refugees. And it was interesting because a lot of the refugee groups or and protest groups and stuff, and a lot of people, though they totally miss the point why people seek refuge, but it's a big thing with Australia. Well, hang on, we invaded that country, we destabilised it. Of course, we should take them on as refugees. Time. I mean, there's plenty of things for everyone to do here in this country. I mean, if they can help out in regional and remote areas, that'd be fantastic. But that's actually going back to it. This is where the cause was. So it was certainly a disgraceful betrayal. Worse than that. And believe me, the respective governments on both sides of politics will be trying to cover their backsides now and trying to cover everything up. I believe I wouldn't be surprised they're shredding documents and reports, etc. But they knew full well what was going on over there. For them to turn around, if any federal government minister or in opposition, etc., turn around and say they didn't know what's going on, well, then maybe they shouldn't be sitting there in Parliament either. So the federal government has got a lot to answer for, as far as I care on that, regardless of what side of politics they go on. I'll probably get blasted for actually accusing the Labor Party as well, but I'm going to just call it out for what's been going on. Let's face it, both sides of politics need to I'll rephrase that. Both sides of politics have got a lot to answer for as well. Going back to industrial relations reform, as I said, look, I'm sorry to just be jumping all over the place. I think actually something we have to look. I won't don't comment too much, but I'm not expecting anything good to come out of this current federal government or any government be that point. I think we've got to make sure the devil's going to be in the detail when it comes out before Christmas. I think it's what a great bit of timing on behalf of the bourgeoisie to put something out like that when it's getting close to Christmas. People want to get this year out of the way, and also we're not organised, ready just to pick up and fight yet. So it's something we've obviously going through those weeks. So that's something, these issues that we need to have a look at. There's obviously a lot more many issues I like to talk about as well, but they've obviously, going back through what we've seen this week, it's I think overall it's been a huge week for all of us. I'm looking forward to a break in January, because I am going to have it all off. I need a break. I need as I said, look, as I started this video, get out and about. I really just want to concentrate, do a few other things, and I think we all need it at a time. And actually, this is something I want to talk about as well. Now, I've been looking on, I won't mention names on that as well. I'm a little bit disappointed with a couple of people there on social media putting remarks about white workers, especially being privileged. I'm going to put something to you right for straight. Regardless of what the colour of your skin, what is your relations to the means of production? Do you own the means of production, or do you work? If you work, you're working class. That's basically what it comes down to. Now, when a couple of those comrades, and I hope that they'll rectify their positions on things, to turn around and saying, I'm privileged, or anyone else, be that matter, they didn't attack me, but I'm going to say this. Our annual leave, what we achieved, that's actually what I want to talk about. So let's talk about our worker entitlements. Well, those entitlements were hard fought for many years by working class people on the picket lines, out for not just for a week or for a day, but for months, years, etc. They did the hard yards for the last 100 years to achieve what we got. The weekend is a classic case in point, right? During your weekend, that was a hard fought for condition. Over 150 years ago, well, maybe you had a Sunday morning off, so you had to go to church, told to go to church. But most of the time, you had to work, and there were 12 to 16-hour days again. And unfortunately, that's come back to us. A lot of workers are doing 12-hour days again, even longer, which is a detriment to their health and safety. But that was a hard-fought condition. Even just the simple 8-hour day. Next year, did you know, is the anniversary of the 38-hour week, when it was first achieved in 1981. It started out for the 35-hour week campaign in the 70s, and then we came to a compromise with a 38-hour week. Eventually, we're going to go to a 35-hour week. But Australia-wide, 38-hour week. Some people, a lot of places choose to do 40 hours, and they have that roster day off once a month. But that was a hard fought for condition. It was a proper industrial campaign. It's not a privilege to have it. That was a hard fought entitlement that was fought for, and still needs to be fought for and protected as well. But what I'm a little bit sick about it, when they can try and put us workers here in, countries like Australia pit ourselves against countries in developing countries, for example, Indonesia or elsewhere, that need to be organised so they can fight for these for some basic conditions like that. Our annual leave, 4 weeks annual leave, and mind you, the union I'm in now, the Australian Manufacturing Union, well, its predecessor union, Amalgamated Metal Workers, and I will say it was the metal workers that was leading union to form to go as 4 weeks annual leave plus a 17.5% annual leave loading on top of your ordinary wage, which is based on your income. And that's something I'm completely proud of. And that was a hard fought for campaign and fight. It wasn't a privilege. It wasn't just given to us. It's interesting how some people had their comment, we're given all these entitlements. It's like, the capitalist was kind-hearted and bought us off. We'll give you all these great entitlements, just don't do anything to us. It didn't happen that way. Right? There was a few significant factors. Internally, here look at the internal and external factors. Internally, the working class was well organised in unions, and they were militant and prepared to have a fight. Right? They had nothing to lose, but they were prepared to have a fight on this. Externally, we had the USSR, the Soviet Union, and especially after the Second World War, the capitalist class knew this for a fact. If they actually don't do something, they might have had to act and give us a few things, but they weren't just given to us on a plate. We had to fight for a lot of things, and still have to fight for a lot of things. Actually, we're fighting to actually defend a lot of stuff now. And to actually turn around and say that we're privileged here because I won, I got white skin. No, sorry. But my relations to the means of production is I still have to work. I don't own it. Let's face it. And some of these people are going, well, white colonial settler nation. Wrong again. Let's just pull up and back there. Let's have a look at the history of what European settlement here in Australia. Well, first of all, it was a penal colony, right? It was derived as a British outpost to defend the East India Company, yes, and to protect its trading routes throughout Southeast Asia, right? It was established to defend the British Empire's trading routes, etc. It was an outpost. Well, along with that, it was also a penal colony. It was a prison outpost. They used prison slave labour to actually start developing things and expand industry as well. It was a form of slavery. Let's face it. Now, you look at the conditions of Britain at the time, they were appalling for the working class. 1700s, early 1800s. Lived in dank, horrible, nasty conditions. Your lifespan, if you lived into your mid-30s, that was a very good life you had. You were malnourished, we had diseases galore, were worked to death, and everything else. Now, yes, and when they actually turned around, the early convicts were criminals. Well, what? Stealing a loaf of bread so you can survive, and that's all you had to eat, and sustenance. And instead of, and it could have been a death sentence, which was a hanging offence back then. So they put you on a ship and sent you here against your will. I mean, most of us didn't come here voluntarily to settle here. Oh, this is a great idea. I can leave this place and come here. Nice sunny beaches, the whole lot. No, that didn't happen that way. And I think we've got to actually put it in example. Was there a landed squattocracy? Yes, there was, through the military top brass. And also other people too that actually did very well out of the penal system and benefited from it. But the majority of people were brought over here on just those spurious grounds. And the next spurious grounds were Irish rebels who were trying to liberate their own country from imperialism. The English Chartists, who were the early Chartist movement, was actually quite revolutionary at the time. And all those who spoke against the Crown, as I said. And actually, I do have a forebear that came over on the Isabella. I think it was the Isabella Elizabeth. His name was John Pomeroy in the 1830s. What was happening there? The Chartist movement. It's from England. What would you think happened? He was caught, wasn't he? And what was it? Because he denunciated the Queen? Because he actually fought for some basic rights we enjoyed now? He was brought over here. He didn't have any criminal activity. So the any criminals was the top brass, any of the wealthy, or the rauders, and that schemers. Very few were actually brought over here. And those convicts that did benefit were the ones that are actually part of the top brass. They came in through the top brass and all that. So they had won special favours, etc. So the majority of everyone were brought here under a very cruel penal system, and you'll merely work to death in a lot of places. So let's just say that's one correction. Let's just pull that up. A lot of us as working class people, now the early forms of the Australian working class here in this country, a lot of them were revolutionaries. Later on, a lot of people did come here in the country because of the gold rushes of the 1850s. And a lot of people have fled Germany after the German Revolution. And these are the same people who fought alongside Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, funny enough. Yes, they came here to the goldfields. Bendigo, itself where I live, is a German-designed city. It's based off Munich and a very few other German cities around here. So is Ballarat to a certain degree. And you find there's large Lutheran sections in the cemeteries around here. And all the early Germans came to it. And they benefited from it. They actually wanted to improve their conditions as well. So we had French revolutionaries as well. We had Italian revolutionaries. One actually notable was Carbione, who helped lead the Eureka Rebellion of 1854, which actually the 3rd of December is their anniversary. So we just click that off. Something wanted me to sync. That's how it comes about. But a lot of the situations is because we're brought here against our will, or we had no choice but to come here in order to live. So really to say that everyone is a colonial settler, and also this stupid identity politics has been split in the working class. Let's get back to the simple thing. Everything is based on class. The hitherto of all existing society is the history of class struggle. Leading opening line of the Communist Manifesto, what Karl Marx said back in 1848. Yeah, it wasn't hitherto of all existing society. Wasn't about the class. It's about the struggle between groups of people, or between races, or between nationalities. It was actually class struggle, and that's just what we get back to. And I was disappointed with a couple of comrades who've said some stupid stuff on Facebook. And look, I'm just going to say this now. Stop putting silly stuff up on Facebook, because it will turn around and bite you at the end of the day. I'm not talking about funny stuff like the rubbery figures at the moment playing Donald Trump and Boris Johnson. That's quite funny. Or, some little joke or whatever. That's quite amusing stuff. But I'm talking about stuff that will just turn around and it'll bite you later on in the foot. Yeah. And I think pitting worker against worker because of the colour of their skin, their gender, or in terms of what if they're gay or not, I think it's a very, very bad thing to do. It's actually a deliberate ploy. I think there's a lot of people in what they call themselves the synthetic left. I've got a lot to answer for, and a lot of people on the right too. And that's got to stop. And those comrades have been putting that sort of stuff up, saying that, white Australian workers are colonial settlers, etc., or they're privileged. Let me just tell you, pull your head in as well and get that stuff off Facebook. It's unscientific. It's wrong. I actually know a lot of white Australian workers, male and female, are doing it very, very tough. Some are on the verge of losing their home. Some are on some sort of pension scheme to try and support themselves, and they're trying to scrape and make ends meet. There's a shitload of them out there, and they're actually quite a majority of them are. The ones that might be able to own a house, well, guess what? They're so indebted, they're actually slaves to the bank for the rest of their lives, trying to pay their house off. So everyone is trying to make ends meet, and just going around saying stuff like that doesn't help the situation. In fact, it plays in the hands of conservative forces and right-wing or ultra-conservative, neoliberal, right-wing forces as well, and into the hands of the fascists. So I will say this to you: cut that out now, and pull your head in and actually do your homework a little bit more instead of trying to get on the attack against us as well. We're all working class, and that's what it comes down to. And this type of forum, I'll certainly not tolerate it either. So that's vitally important. We need to get back into class politics. Actually, I want a big shout out to the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist Leninists. They did a good book on gender politics. I've been reading it. Very interesting. Gender ID and transgenderism, a whole lot. And it's a very good book, actually, very good and very scientific. And well done to you for putting that out. And it's actually about bringing us all back together as a class, not what divides us. And I think it pulls apart all the petty bourgeois trends that seem to filter through these days. Certainly over those petty bourgeois trends. I'm hearing it for the last 20 years, and I'll tell you what, they've made themselves more irrelevant, even more so. And so, look, for those comrades who, I'm not going to name names. I'm not here to ridicule anyone, but look, you know who you are. You know who I'm talking about. Knock it off. If you've got an issue, then why don't you just raise it quietly? If there's something, then we can try and resolve it. But don't try and put stuff up like that on Facebook, because it certainly will turn around and backfire at the end of the day. So that's actually what I wanted to talk about. A lot of our hard-earned conditions, such as our annual leave, and some of our, not just our paying conditions type of thing, but everything else we enjoy was hard fought for by working class people for the last 100, 150 years. Excuse me. Just have some water here. And that's what it comes down to. It wasn't given to us, it was hard fought for. Yes, we had some advantages there at some stage, but what it comes down to, if we want to gain certain things, we have to be well organised and to do so. And it's an essential part for anything moving forward as well. We can put a key list of demands, but if our demands are not met, what are we going to do? If we haven't got the organisations, then we're certainly going up a dead end. So we do need to, if we want to put some key demands out there for working class people, we do need to be organised and ready to fight. I think I just want to read that. The same people who today punched out IPOL bullshit would have been the most ardent racists in the past. They are also the enemies of the workers today. And correct, completely right. I 200 billion% agree with you, artist. And that's right. And that is correct as well. They are enemies of the working class. They're actually there deliberately to hinder the working class organisation and actually stop the historical role of the working class to do away with capitalism and seize power and obviously bring on socialism by raising the material abundance of the world for everybody and bring everyone out of poverty as well, so we can move forward to a classless society eventually. So that's I've also been very wary about that. There's plenty, and unfortunately, there's plenty of them out there. They seem to be breeding like flies at times. But anyway, that's going back to what we've got to focus on. Just get back on to it. I think all comrades, and some look, comrades, don't kick yourself for putting it up there, but just for those who have been putting a few things up there, just be wary. I'm just highlighting it's something. I'm not out here to persecute you for doing it, but just highlighting a fact and probably just look, injecting here because it can be used against you in the future. And actually, it goes for all things about social media as well. Look, I'm also very aware of what I have to say about on these live chats as well. Talking to someone last week, what I do, and I've got to be careful because I'm also a trade union official as well. I'm an organiser. I'm also very wary about when I say a few things. I don't want to get my organisation into trouble legally as well. All right, so that's why I've got to sometimes be a bit restrained with what I've got to say as well, because all I have to do is saying, well, because I'm an organiser, I work for a union, that union's in trouble, and I don't want to cause that as well. I've got to be a little bit careful what to say. And yes, look, social media, this is the other thing we have to be very careful. We put up on social media because it can be used against you by corporations. If they want to sue you, they will come after you. Now, I'll give you a little actually interesting news. And I did this training some years back about Facebook etiquette and just about Facebook in general and other social media forums such as Reddit and Twitter. I've got two accounts. I've got one with Twitter and I've got one with Facebook. It's when we posted anything up there, be it in a private group or secret group or a closed group, whatever you want to call it, or even an open group, it is publication, right? So it could be anything. Now, if you're putting something up on a company, could be any multinational, always, first of all, just get some checks first before you put anything up. It has to be factual, but making sure that it's not going to be used against you either. So if you put something up, even if it's in a closed group, that's publication. Now, you might be in a secret closed group on Facebook, discussion group, for example. There's plenty of them out there. There's probably a squillion and one from out there. The fact is, you might not think, oh, well, that's only within those people within that group. Might know. Guess what? Wrong again. Because if the company wants to go you, they can actually seize the records from Facebook and they can ask them to produce a particular post you put up there. And Facebook will produce it. The other thing too, if you delete a post, you realise you made a mistake and delete a post, well, Facebook's got a copy of it. So as long as Twitter as well. So anything you delete, there's a record of it. And they can bring that up and use you against you in court of law if that happens to be the case. And in the capitalist class, I found a great way of trying to attack the working class is through fines, big severe fines. Not just talking about like $1,000. I'm talking about tens and thousands of dollars, and cripple you financially. And it knows how to do that to attack working class organisations such as unions in Australia that can cripple them financially, and they just basically stop functioning overnight. So that's why we've got to be very careful what we say, and even YouTube as well. If I come out and attack a company and if it's not factual and it might actually adversely affect them, I could be in a lot of trouble. And that's just the reality we're up against these days. The laws are there, it will gear to protect them. So just be aware of what you put up there as well and other things as well. If you ever need to ask, don't be afraid, or if you're in doubt, don't be afraid to ask either. If you say you want to put a post up about, say, X company, right? I won't name it. X multinational company. They've done this, and this. These are a list of crimes. They've done this, and this. Put it up there. Look, sometimes ask. Get some further advice first before you want to put something up there. I know we all run on passion and emotion and that, but don't let brawn get in front of your brains either. Use your brain, not use your brawn, if you want to put it that way. So just be wary about that as well, because things, as I said to you, I don't mean to keep repeating myself, but things can be used against you in the future. And I would hate to see any good comrade being pulled into the court of law and have the book thrown in and be crippled financially because they did something stupid on Facebook or any other social media. So always just be careful about that. That's just a handy little tip for you, especially in Australia here. If you're going to put stuff up on Facebook, sometimes maybe just get a check. If you're going to do these type of live chats, also we've got to be careful at times. I'm worried about police knocking down my door. Although I'm not going to say things are stupid to allow that to happen, but also about being dragged in the law. And I've got to be careful because I've got to do work for a union, and I don't want to get them into trouble either, in the sense where, especially if we're in hot dispute with a particular company. What I've actually said today, well, that was actually straight out of the media. So it's already on the public record, so it's not like it's any trade secret or whatever. So that's something that's something we'll just be always wary of as well. I think overall, it's interesting how people go on about free speech and all that. And Caleb Maupin did a really good video about freedom of speech, and that I actually shared it up on my Facebook. But go to his page, go to his YouTube channel. It's easy done. Just go to YouTube, put his name in, and it'll go straight to his channel. He did an excellent piece on that about rights and freedom of speech was one of them. It's interesting enough, very interesting. Article and very dialectical as well. So well done, Caleb Maupin, if you're watching. So just all those things to be aware of. What I actually, like I've said tonight, if someone asked me the question, well, you said that, yes, I can, because what I've said was actually on the historical record anyway. It's public fact. It's nothing. It's nothing new. I'm just putting a little commentary onto it, which you can do. But just as I said, it also too, comrades, especially if you are trying to unionise your workplace or anything you do, you're trying to seek further job opportunities as well. Always be careful, because employers companies, not just employers, companies overall do checks on social media, especially the ones you're working for. I won't mention the big, large scale, or let's just say every multinational does, corporation, but also medium corporations as well. They have got a team. They do employ people just to look at social media every day and get that. So just be aware of what you put up. I understand now why even the comrades here are commenting on my thing like a TARDIS. So I can understand why you have used different names. I'm a little bit different. People know on the public record know what my politics are. I'm not nothing to hide. Nothing to hide on that. But for a lot of you that are seeking employment elsewhere, I don't want to actually stuff that up. For yes, if you want to go under a different pseudonym name or write articles, etc., I get that. It's probably important. I know a lot of people involved in politics, a lot of political persuasions change their names on Facebook and that. I'm a little bit different. I'm probably because I'm a little bit more, might be in my genes. I like bring it on sort of attitude. I'm a little bit more thick-skinned, but the reality is, in the end of the day, that's also too, just to always be wary about that. It's interesting, I've learned that lesson in the last 10 years. Especially in my role as both a union organiser, but also just being generally active in the working class overall. It's a good lesson learnt, because if you put something up about a company, that can be used against your employment opportunity as well. So it's not just a matter of being dragged in the court of law, having the book thrown at you and fined. It's also too, this could also stuff your employment up. So if you're going for a particularly good job, you're going to get it, and then all of a sudden done a profile check, we're not going to employ you because of this, and you said that, well, just be careful about that. And you don't want to be at a job and be tapped on the shoulder and said, you're no longer required. And that can really throw you, especially those comments. Once again, be very careful, especially if you're in a hostile environment at work and you're trying to unionise your workplace. Always be guided. Don't be afraid to get on the phone and speak to your respective union organiser or union office about advice about moving forward. But if you're going to post something, check first. Don't put it up, and if you have to set up to change your name slightly or whatever, then do so. But just always take into account what goes up on Facebook or any other social media forum, Twitter, Reddit. God knows, there's about 1 million of them out there now. It becomes publication. Someone's got ownership of it, along with your photo and everything else. So just always keep that in the back of your mind. Just be a little bit smart about things, and be aware of what you've got to do moving forward. And but on something like this, I don't mind. There's live chat, and as I said, people know where I stand, but I'm also very wary of what I have to say as well. So I'll keep that in the back of the mind. Well, look, folks, that's pretty much about it. I'm just rambling on now. Before I go, I just want to bring your attention. Working Class Revolt, again, is on tomorrow, 12 p.m. Our time, Australian Eastern Daylight Time. And it'll be 8 p.m. there, Dust James time in North Carolina, or on the eastern seaboard of the US. Hopefully, for those comrades in Europe and UK, you might be able to tune in. I understand that might be the early hours of the morning. I think there's 11-hour time difference between here and London. at the moment. So I know also to more live chats. I will adjust the times. Tom will allow some of the British comrades and other European comrades to times to come and view these things. Otherwise, I have to view it after. But I like to engage with them as well. But just on that, so it's 12 o'clock tomorrow. We're obviously Working Class Revolt. If you're actually interested in interviews on that as well, feel free to drop us a line on Facebook, or talk to Dust James as well. And look, I also I recommend listening to Dust James. Just type that in Google. Once again, not Google, YouTube. Just type that in and you'll go straight to his channel. And he does some great live chats. I actually do love his passion. He reminds me of the preacher, and we all should have a Sunday school session with him. So what we call, I think it was called the Socialist Sunday Schools, so he was really good, very good, and I love his articulation and his arguments. He's also a great singer as well. I think he should have been. He did a rock and roll number last week that's when we were interviewing Caleb. Excellent. So it's 12 o'clock tomorrow, our time, 12 p.m. our time tomorrow. Look, tune in there. Just type in Dust James on his YouTube channel or on Facebook as well. We'll be going live via those two venues. But look, thanks again for your participation. Please share this out far and wide. I am trying to improve my public speaking on this. It's quite a challenge. Speak using this forum. I am in Toastmasters. I might actually ask them to help me to do a lot more development and doing this public broadcasting in this way, but it's quite challenging. I'm good at getting up on the stump and giving a fiery speech, but when it comes to this stuff, different old angle of it. Caleb's excellent on this. So look, thank you once again for tuning in, and look, I wish you all the best for the weekend. Stay safe. Look, we all need your peace. We all need you in one piece. And for the longer fight for socialism. And once again, look, thank you for all those of the support as well. So share this far and wide on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, whatever other social media forum. Invite many other comrades and friends. We're trying to build a community here as well, especially over Australia. We do need to build this and build this community here. We've got a lot of work to do. It's not about me. I don't want to be this about me. I want this to be about all of us and how we can have ideological engagement with the working class, with the masses. Get out of the movement. Let's get into the masses. Well, thank you. You enjoy your weekend and all the best to you. And I'll speak to you next week. Well, actually, I'll see you all tomorrow at 12 o'clock our time. Dare to struggle, dare to win. If you don't fight, you lose. Thank you.